Hey, it's Classic DM, and welcome back to another first edition AD&D for new players episode. So this episode we're going to talk about two classes at the same time. We're going to talk about the Thief and the Assassin. We'll mostly focus on the Assassin, which is one of my favorite classes of all time to play. If you've seen our G1 and G2 series, you know one of the stars of that series is Varenjar, and Varenjar's nasty. He's a fantastic assassin. He's got some really amazing gear, and we're going to kind of use him as a star, and we talk about some of the things you need to do when you're playing an assassin. We'll go back to G1, to the entry room in G1, which you got here in this little battle map set up here. We'll go back in time and talk about how to infiltrate this first room, how to scope things out, kind of how to play the assassin, and also we're going to run through kind of quickly in our classic player's handbook their original entry for the class as well, right? So before we get too bogged down in this area, let's go ahead and get that player's handbook open. I got the cool reprints that were done in 2012, and oh goodness gracious, where's our thief at? Is he? He's after right after the magic user, right? So magic users, ends on 26, and you get the very bottom little section here. We start talking about the thief. Okay, it's a little tiny on the screen. But I'm not going to read everything to you, but I want to go through some of it pretty quickly, right? And I'm going to make this a little bit larger so it's a little bit easier to see. So we're going to zoom this in a little bit, and we'll just slide it over. Okay, so right down here, the profession of thief is not dishonorable, albeit neither honorable nor highly respected in some quarters. The major ability for a thief is dexterity, and a character must have not less than 9 to become a thief. So right off the bat, you could be a thief with 10 dexterity. All your other stats could be 3, okay? Now you wouldn't want that really. High intelligence is also desirable. Any thief character with a dexterity greater than 15 gains a benefit being able to add a bonus of 10% to experience. Like we talked about many times before in first edition, if you have a main stat and you're higher than the basics of the main stat, you're going to get the bonus to experience, right? So that's really up to you whether you want to play it that way or not. We never really played it that way. We were roll 4d6 and drop 1 to give you your hit points. So set your stats. Say your roll for dexterity. You want to play a thief. You want to play an assassin. Like, oh man, let's do the roll right here. So there's a 1. That sucks. A 1 and a 4 is a 5. Plus another 4 was that 9. Plus 6, 14. That's not too bad. So we would drop the lowest one. So these right here would be the actual stats. This would be a 14 dexterity thief. Now, there's so many debates about how to roll character stats. I don't do that anymore. It's 40 years later. I have a different method to do it. I'll do an episode on it. But for the thief, this holds true for the assassin as well. You want to have high dexterity. That's fantastic. It'll give you a lot of bonuses to all your thieving abilities, which are really powerful, really powerful in the first edition. So the other thing that's very interesting is all their class functions like picking pockets, open locks, hide in shadows, hear noise, climb walls, find and remove traps. Those things get bonuses by having higher dexterity. So pretty obvious. You played 5th edition, you know this already, right? Even if you played WoW and played a rogue, you know that agility is important. Same kind of thing. These are neutral or evil, although they can be neutral good rarely, and lawful and chaotic in nature. The alignment debate is another 3-hour Christopher Hitchens debate as well. I won't go off on a tangent on too much, but in my opinion, if you're going to play a thief, you have to be willing to kill somebody. If you're going to play an assassin, you have to be willing to kill someone. And it doesn't necessarily mean someone else in your party. These are characters that are survivalists. They're opportunists. They are going to do things with subterfuge. They are not interested in a duel that's one-on-one and honorable. They're going to win by any means necessary. They're a ganker in PvP, right? They want to gank people. They want to gank the enemies. They have lower health. They don't have access to the greatest armor. They have fantastic damage from stealth and surprise, especially surprise backstabs. So if you're playing a thief, think of playing like a rogue in WoW, or oh gosh, go all the way back to Ultima Online. You're playing a fencer or something like that, using stealth, you're stealing. So you're playing kind of a shady character to some degree. Now, the thing about playing a thief I think is really exciting is that you can play one any way you want. So you don't necessarily, okay, look at Neverwinter. If you're going to play the rogue or trickster rogue or whatever they call it in Neverwinter, you're using like 2 little daggers, and that's kind of it. You only have like 4 or 5 daily powers, a couple encounter powers, that's it. In first edition, you're really wide open on what you want to use. Your race could even give you bonuses. You can play an elven thief and get bonus for using long swords, all kinds of stuff like that. So let's go look at this here. Right? So thieves are principally meant to take cunning and stealth. Thieves have 6-sided hit dice. Now obviously, if you haven't played anything before, the hit dice is how we refer to how many hit points you get per level. I believe in giving every character max hit points per level plus their comm bonus, but that's another issue. They fight slightly more effectively than magic users. Now, in context, what does that mean? You will find, if you look at the Dungeon Master's Guide or have a copy of the DM screen, In fact, I don't usually do this, but I'm going to pop one open real quick. I got a copy of a DM screen right here that I scanned maybe 15 years ago. It's crazy. Let's pull that up here real quick. You'll see that when you're determining what does it take for you to roll to hit and hit things, the numbers for the thief are a little different than the other classes. So let's go down here to combat and saving throws, and we'll just put this over. We'll just get this out of the way. And then we just put this buffer over for show and hide the navigation pane for thumbnails. That way it'll center for you better. All right, great. So this one, top table here, is the attack matrix for clerics and druids, the upper left-hand corner. This one, the upper right-hand corner, is attack matrix for magic users and illusionists. This is for fighters. The lower left is fighters, paladins, rangers, and bards. And then the bottom right is thieves and assassins. So they have their own to-hit table. Let's just do a quick comparison, all right? So here's Rinjar, here's Mercedes, and let's put the druid, and we got an illusionist. And say they're all trying to hit some, let's say he was an AC 0 hill giant. Now he's not really. Let's just say he's AC 0 hill giant, just to give us a sense of like what kind of damage numbers, what kind of numbers do they need to roll to hit this guy. So we'll put this down here a little closer and take a look and see what it would take to do it. So let's just refocus that real quick. And we'll move this down here, make this a little bit bigger for you. All right, so here they are. They're going to swarm this dude, right? So all four of these characters are going to melee this guy at once. They're just doing regular melee swings. They're not going to do anything dramatic. They're not casting any spells. This is just to give you a sense of like what's it going to take to hit this dude. All right, so right off the bat, let's do the cleric. In fact, let's put Antola up here. Let's just do it one by one. One by one. Here's a cleric. Cleric's got his flail. He's going to take a swing at this dude. Maybe they're facing each other or whatever. AC 0 hill giant. Not really, but just take a look right here. This here, our cleric's level 10. Okay, he needs a 14. So he needs a 14 to hit this guy. That means you got to roll d20. This right here. We're looking at this on AC 0. He needs a 14, level 10. You go X and Y axis. The Y axis for the level. He needs a 14. So let's just put that down right here on the piece of paper. So cleric needs a 14. Okay. In fact, let's just put that. We'll put that right here. I'm going to put this upside down. But cleric needs a 14. And let's put an illusionist taking a swipe at this guy. And what's an illusionist going to need? We go back to our table. It's kind of like an old school war game, right? Magic user and illusionist. AC 0. Let's say she was level 10. Now you can see they've adjusted the thresholds where things change over. So the illusionist and the magic users change over to level 11. So let's just say she's level 10 illusionist. She's going to need a 19 to hit. Even if she was level 11, she'd need a 16. In fact, we'll give her level 11. Let's give her the 16. She's a 16 to hit this guy. If he was AC 0. Now let's go down to our fighter table. And the fighters are supposed to be able to hit things really easily. They're masters of using martial weapons, all this kind of business. You know that level 10 fighter, AC 0. Here's the row right here. They need a 12. So let's say that Zolars and Mercedes were trying to hit this dude. They only need 12s, right? So she needs a 12. He needs a 12. Now you're starting to get a vibe, right? So far, who's got the easiest for the fighters to hit? Second easiest is the cleric. Third difficult, I would say. Third easiest is the illusionist. And the druid also gets the same table as the cleric. So whether we had Veltirna and Antola side by side, finding both of them need a 14 to hit this guy. So we're going to put them behind the 14. We'll move her behind the 16. Put the two fighters behind the 12. Now let's step up with a Vrinjar and Assassin. What's he going to take to hit this guy? Right? Let's take a look at here. AC 0. Say he's level 10, it'll be a 19. Let's just go ahead and give him the next level. He needs a 16. So you're saying to yourself, wait a minute. A level 11 Assassin and a level 11 Illusionist melee with the same number. So your first reaction is like, oh my goodness, that sucks. Well, first of all, the Illusionist is never going to be meleeing anything. That's not what she's all about. Second of all, he could be attacking from stealth and hide in shadows. So let's go through the player's handbook a little bit more and just have to reveal slowly over time what makes the thief really powerful. And to tell you the truth, it's all about backstab. This is something that a lot of people have forgotten about over the years. In its purest form, it's the backstab that makes things amazing and incredible. So let's go a little further here. So the primary functions, they call it, as a thief. Let me turn these background sounds down a little bit. The primary functions of the thief are picking pockets, opening locks, finding and remove traps, moving silently, hiding in shadows. Hey, if you played Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 or Icewind Dale, you know how important it is to be having a thief running around, hiding and finding and remove traps, have that whistling sound when a little trap and a plate shows up on the floor. it's pretty useful. I mean, if you're doing the Tomb of Horrors, you're going to need someone to find and remove traps. You're going to prick your finger and get poison trap on that first mounted chest in the first hallway. So yeah, that's great. No other class gets to do this. So right off the bat, the thief can figure out mechanisms and devices. They can pick pockets. You could actually go up to some NPC that's sleeping, hidden in shadows, go up there and slip the jail keys out of his pocket, walk away without fighting. So it's an opportunity for you to be creative. So what could you do with pickpockets? You could actually plant something. If you ever played Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, not Fallout 3 and 4, they're not very good. 1 and 2 were fantastic. The original games done by Interplay, who's my friends used to call Underpay. If you play that game, you can actually plant lit dynamite on characters and they blow up. Really fun. So you got to be creative when you think about pickpockets. It's not just stealing coins from someone, okay? Then the other abilities they're going to have is opening locks, finding root traps, moving silently, hiding in shadows, right? So opening locks, they're basically picking locks, right? What would you would expect a thief to be able to pick a door, and you have to, the DM has to kind of like think about that because it depends what the mechanism is. You know, did you have thieves tools? If you played lots of in the old version of World of Warcraft, you used to have thieves tools. As I remember correctly, you used to have all kinds of powders and junk you had to use. That's fantastic. You get a big chest, have them disarm traps, open a chest, no one gets blown up. If you played EverQuest 2, you know how important it is. A lot of times those chests come out with all kinds of traps that can really hurt you. So that's really, really useful. Yes, fantastic. We all get that, right? Finding root traps, we talked about a moment ago. Finding root traps is something where they're going to roll, all these abilities are percentage rolls, where you're going to check an area out, you're suspicious of something, you're going to look and see, hey, is there a trap here? And if you roll successfully, the DM will tell you what you see. If you don't roll successfully, maybe you don't see it and you step right on top of it. That's something about the thief and the DM need to kind of come to terms with that. So let's just talk about that as an example here, a little zoomed in here. We'll get these other kids out of the way. Let's get the dumb hill giant out of the way. Now that we're in here close, let's just draw on the board here and say that we have say there's a chest sitting down, huge 10-foot long chest, big lock mechanism on it. And let's say it has, the Dungeon Master knows that there's a 5-foot pit. It looks like that in the old modules right in front of it, right? So we'll pull this back just a little bit like that. 5-foot pit. And you got your dude coming up. He's, hey, I'm going to go here and find and remove traps. So he's going to do find and remove traps. Let's look at Vrenjar's stats here, right? So he's a level 10 assassin, so FRT is 70%. So how do you roll that? Well, the player's going to say, you see the chest, DM describes the chest, obsidian chest with gold inlays on it, looks fantastic, it's sitting on a wooden floor. And the player say, okay, I want to check the chest out and find and remove traps. That could be a mistake, because the DM is like going to assume you may have just stepped right in front of the thing. Well, as soon as you step up to the chest and start messing with it, a pit door opens out from underneath you. What you have to do as a thief is like, you thinking to yourself, this whole thing could be trapped, right? So think about where the trap might be. And if you read a bunch of modules, this is one thing I encourage you to do if you do play a thief, read a bunch of modules and figure out the top 20 traps that everyone uses all the time. So you would do a percentile roll, which is there's a percentile die here. One's on the 10-sided and one's the single digits from 1 to 10. Let's just do a check for him, right? So this is 53. So unlike rolling to hit, where you got to roll higher than the number, when there's a percentage chance in first edition, you need to roll that or less. Like someone says, hey, dude, you got a 2% chance of winning the Florida lottery, right? Or the Texas lottery or wherever you live. That means you got to roll 0, 2, or lower to hit the lottery. So if someone says you have a 70% chance of getting a pay raise or 70% chance of wrecking your car or your motorcycle, then if you roll a percentile die, let's say you had a 25% chance to for lightning to strike you, right? So we roll a 35, that means lightning doesn't strike you. So the percentile die rolls are really important, but the thing is, the player wants to roll these kinds of dice. So for the DM, it's going to let the player roll. It's like, okay, I find and remove traps, 43. But the player doesn't know what the trap is. Remember, the player just sees this. This is what the player sees. So he sees this chest. In fact, we'll turn the chest this way so it's for the camera in the back more. So here's the back of this big chest. And we all know as a DM that we got a trap door in front of it. Here's the chest, right? The lock in the front. So it's up to the DM to explain what he sees. So here's your chest. And the DM says, you have a find and remove traps. You sense there's some kind of pressure plate happening in front of it. So he doesn't know what it is. You're not going to say, oh, it's a pit door. Don't just give it away. Like, let the player figure out what the devil it is. That's half the detective work of playing a thief. It's interesting gameplay for him to think about what the traps might be. So you tell the player as a DM, like, well, you think there's some kind of some kind of floor mechanism in this area directly in front of the chest. The player will go, I'm just going to go around to the side here. I'm going to go around the side carefully, and I'm going to check again to find and remove traps. So you find and remove traps, FRT, right? FRT. You don't get to find and remove the traps in one roll. It's just the same percentage chance. So you have a 70% chance to find the trap. So in this case, he saw the pressure plate. It's a 70% chance to remove it, right? Let's do that roll. In this case, 64. Barely remove it. So then he could deactivate this pressure plate where that he can now maybe stand on it, or maybe he triggers it on purpose and the little trap doors fall away and now he knows the trap's there. Maybe he can even trigger the trap. It depends what the trap is. Some situations there's a lot of poison chests with little needles and things like that that'll prick your finger and give you lethal poison. All kinds of nasty stuff. You've seen traps in games, role-playing games, MMOs. So think about the find and remove traps as a great way to prevent you party from getting obliterated, because traps can be very, very nasty. In fact, in first edition, every 10 feet you fall is a D6. So if you fall 40 feet down a pit trap, and there's spikes in the bottom, right? 40 feet. So you're going to take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, plus the 6. That's 16 damage just from falling 40 feet. Now, if you're a monk, you can bounce off the walls and stuff. There could be spikes at the bottom that do 1d8 for every spike that hits you, and the DM could say, well, okay, 2d4, 1 and 4, 5 spikes hit you. Each one does 1 to 8 damage. And if it's a longsword, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, plus 8, 17, plus the 6 gives you 23. You need one more d8 in there, 26. You take 26 damage from the spikes hitting you, and then you maybe have to make a saving throw versus poison, plus the 16 damage from falling. It'll probably kill you. I mean, your level 10 thief, your max health is going to probably be between 60 and 70, depending on what your constitution bonus is. So much easier to be methodical and careful. When you see a trap, remove it. Don't step on it. Don't do anything silly. If you come into a chest and you're going to try to pick the lock, do a find and remove traps first, and then try to check it. It's up to the DM to kind of make it as engaging and back and forth as interesting as possible. For example, the dungeon master just have a book that just says, a module says, a needle trap on the lock that gives you poison if it hits you. Well, it's up to the DM to make that interesting. So you say you go up to the trap, the chest, you say, I want to try to find and remove traps. He says, oh, you see there's some kind of a pressure needle thing on the mechanism when you pick the lock. He says, well, I want to disable that. And the DM might say, well, do a pickpockets check, an open lock chest check first. So look at Varenjar, right? So he's got FF, PP is 95% chance to pickpockets. Let's see if I can highlight this for you. Right down here, okay? This is where the thief abilities are. Open locks is 80% chance. So let's say, okay, open locks, we roll 55. He can open lock fine. Does he find the trap? A 0004, which is a 4. He found the trap. Can he remove the trap? A 70 even. Yes, he barely removed the trap, and he can open the lock. So all three of those rolls, just to prevent yourself from being poked in the fingertip with the needle. See it, disarm it, and then pick the lock. So see it, disarm it, and then pick the lock. Finding root traps is a way for you to see things. It's not like searching. Like, oh, I want to search the wall here to see if there's any secret doors. Say you want to search along this wall. A lot of times, D will make you spend a whole turn and make you roll some D6 or all this kind of business. But with a rogue, okay, or an assassin or a thief in first edition, find and remove traps, in my opinion, would give you the same kind of sense of observation. So let's say there's a secret door hidden right here. We all know what they look like in the first edition. So I could come in this area here in close proximity of it, 10 to 15 feet, which is about as far away as you standing, from the front of the car to the back of the car in the driveway, and have this find and remove traps roll, in this case 36. So when you detect that there's some kind of strange mechanism along the wall around here, and then you can get a little closer and maybe do some kind of perception check or roll against his intelligence or give him a modifier based on this. All those kinds of things you can make up on the fly. Okay, let's get back to the player's handbook real quick. So, moving silently is the ability to move with little sound and disturbance, even when on squeaky wood floors, for instance, or the ability to and his ability improves the experience. So as you level up your assassin or thief, you'll have this move silently. The move silently thing is hard to do, and so is hide in shadows. When I say it's hard to do, it's because the percentage chance to achieve it is low. So look at Varenjar again. Picking pockets, 95% chance. He's like a level 11 assassin, no problem. Open locks, 80%, no problem. Find and remove traps, 70%, no problem. Now we have move silently, 88%. So he has the ability to move silently. So even in this map here, which is from the first room in the setting of Hill Giant, this is a puddle of water. This is where water's dripped down from the ceiling and puddled, and this is all mud. All right, this whole thing is mud. Let's say, for example, that he had already made a hidden shadows roll, and there was a Hill Giant standing here looking the wrong way. So let's say the Hill Giant's looking this way, and you're hidden in shadows. Well, if you come walking up to this guy, he's going to hear this because you're making noise, because you're splattering around with your boots. You need to move silently and hide in shadows, but hide first and then move silently second. So it's just like stealthing up in World of Warcraft or Elder Scrolls Online or even in Ultima Online. Same thing as these MMOs and RPGs. And you know how hard it is to do that in Baldur's Gate and those games. So you're standing still, stand still, hide in shadows. Now here's something else to think about. Let's take a look on the bigger picture view here. And I'll make this a little bit smaller. So let me just refocus that camera real quick. And we're going to make this one a little bit smaller so you can see the bigger room. Okay? All right, so let's say we had this dude standing here. I'm going to make him face that way, right? He's facing this way. Maybe he's occasionally looking this way. He's like playing idle animation. He's got this big puddle of water happening here. Water's dripping down from a leaky, crappy setting, the hill giant, and you happen to be in the area. This is a Vrinjar over here, right? So he decided to hide in shadows. So what's the first thing we got to do? Well, the hide in shadows thing is a little different. His is 75% chance. Let's just say you give the player a chance to do the roll. It's okay, 44, so you successfully hid in shadows. If this room was not dark and grungy looking, it might be harder to do that, because if you look carefully here at our battle map, which is why I always encourage people to make their own battle maps, is you got a torch here. Well, torches give off smoke. It's going to go up to the ceiling. This big brazier is burning here. It's going to be giving smoke. Think about where all the smoke is going to be drawn to. This is the outside air. It's cooler. Cool air, rainy night. You can probably hear the sounds in the background playing. You know, when we were doing this adventure, it was a sleeting storm, so all the smoke is going this way. We got a little torch burning here and smoke whipping out the door. A torch burning here. So torches make noise, little crackling sounds, right? Torch over here. So all the smoke's kind of going way up to the tall ceiling. So the smoke is something you could use to hide in shadows. So if you went to hide in shadows and moved around this way, I might give you a bonus to hide in shadows, like move through the smoke. But you're not invisible. That's one thing a lot of people forget. Like in World of Warcraft, you stealth up, you're invisible. Elder Scrolls Online, you crouch down, you're invisible. People just can't see you. And that's the only way the computer games can make it as a video game designer. Only way they can make it kind of feel like no one can see you, and you have the signs and feedback to know that they can't see you. Excuse me. So let's go back to our sneaking up on the hill giant situation, right? So Vrinjar's, he's hiding in the shadow successfully. Now before you even start moving, this guy's just standing here looking back and forth, he's just looking back and forth. Just do it this way so you can see, but he's looking back and forth, thinking about the door, thinking about his friend bringing him a beer or whatever, right? They're going to do move silently check. In this case, a 25. That's pretty easy to do. If you look on Vrinjar's character sheet here to the right, it says MS. It doesn't mean multiple sclerosis. It means move silently, right? So 88% chance. So that's really, really good numbers to work with. Hide in shadows is 75% for him, and his move silently is what, 88? Is that what we said it was? So if he does that successfully, that means he could sneak up on this guy, just walk very carefully and slowly, sneak right up behind him, get right behind him, and then do two, he's a dual wielder, 2 attacks from surprise, guaranteed backstabs. Now, if you had not rolled enough to hide in shadows, I don't let you not do it. So what it is, you're trying to conceal yourself, but how do you know if you're concealed until something sees you? So this is one thing that makes it very tricky. The player has to trust you on this. So you don't say, oh, you fail your hide in shadows check, and you know that you're not hidden in shadows, so whatever you were going to do, it isn't going to work, and you're not going to get to do it. That's not really how you should play it. So the player's like, okay, I'm going to roll my hide in shadows check, and let's say the player rolled a, I don't know, say he rolled a 98, a 99. A 99 for hide in shadows, a 99 for move silently. Well, he thinks he is, and you have to play honestly that way. So I'm going to try to sneak up with this guy moving as slow as soon as you take 2 or 3 steps, this guy might turn around. The DM might say, okay, let's say this hill giant has intelligence of 9. I'm going to see if I can roll his intelligence or less on 3d6. If I roll less than a 9, then he hears you. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 16. Nope, he doesn't hear you. And you can start creeping closer and closer. Step in the water, might make an additional noise. You're closer to him now. We all know that sound travels in a radius, right? It all emanates. As you get closer, I might give this guy, let's take away 6 on this roll. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, take away 6 is 3. He's like, huh? Turns around, there you are. Even though the shadows of the torch are casting your shadows on the ground like this, and maybe the shadow from this way might be casting a shadow on the ground like this. And if you look at our lighting here on the table, you can see this is the shadow outline of our miniature, right? He turns around, he sees you. So if you had successfully hidden in shadows and moved silently, he would not see you and wouldn't hear you coming. So that's something that's very, very important to do, because if you're playing a thief, don't think that you're going to roll the dice and immediately get a free invisibility spell, because that's not what it is, okay? A little bit off on a tangent on that in details, but it's important to think about that. Now, the same kind of thing should apply when you do hear noise. So besides hide in shadows, we have, whoops, wrong page. Let's put that back up here. Sorry, I dragged the whole page down by accident. All right. So hide in shadows, we talked about that already. Let's talk about hear noise. No, listening at doors, activity, blah, 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 blah. You can read all this stuff here. Here's the thing that I like to rule on this. Let's say that the two hill giants are over here standing at the door griping about having to work to play guard all night long and how it's raining. And they're talking about how one time I was in the rain and I left my club outside and it got all wet. The next day it made squishy sounds. Whatever, right? This Venjar doesn't speak, hill giant. He doesn't know what he's saying. And he's looking at them. So hearing noise doesn't apply. He's not eavesdropping and determining what these two guys are saying. Hear noise applies when there's a sound beyond a doorway or beyond a portal and he's not really sure what's going on. So let's say that Venjar was over here by the door. We could bring this in a little closer, right? Let's say Venjar was over here. Let's put this in close like that. And we'll focus it again for you. There you go, a little bit better. So he's over here by the door, and I want to listen on the other side of the door. Say there's a door in a dungeon. Say there was more dungeon this way. So what you would do, you say, okay, what's your hear noise check? Well, let's look at his character sheet again real quick. Hear noise for him is what? It's actually quite low, isn't it? 35%. So let's just move this out of the way down here. 35% chance. That is a really low. He's like a level 11 assassin. So here's what happens. Here's how I would do it. You let the player do the roll, in this case a 48, and then the DM should still tell you what you hear from the perspective of a normal person or a thief who's got better skills than most people listening at the door. But don't give them the details. So I actually wrote an article about this on the webpage. You should go check it out. I'll pop it back up to the top of the page sometime so you can read it. Let's say behind the door there is 7 skeletons shuffling about mindlessly. Well, as a DM, what you want to say, you hear the sound of like bony feet shuffling on the floor, maybe 5, maybe 12 different sets of footfalls. It's hard to tell. It sounds like they're moving kind of slowly, kind of shuffling around. Right? That could be anything. That could be zombies. That could be liches. That could be dudes that are drunk wearing sandals that are wet. It doesn't matter. But if you rolled the hear noise check you got successfully, as a DM, that's when you should say you hear the sound of probably 4 or 5 skeletons slowly moving around as if they're guarding a room, but they're moving around kind of in a slow pace. That gives me more information. You told me they were skeletons because I was able to detect that from the fact that they've got bony feet, they're not wearing any shoes, not wearing any boots, not wearing any plate mail solerettes or anything. So give the player more detailed information when he makes that hear noise check, because the hear noise check is really, 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 really hard. And it doesn't mean yes or no. It's not a Boolean. It's not you hear nothing. Like, don't ever do that. Let the player have something, but he just can't specifically tell what it is. That's what this check is really about. This check is about, can you identify exactly what the sound is? Like, you got a kid lives next door playing the drums, right? You listen carefully. You hear a novice person playing a drum, a hi-hat, a snare drum, maybe a tom, and a bass drum. But if you made your hear noise check, you'd be able to hear these playing a DW Neil Peart series double bass drum with 2 zildjian cymbals and 1 hi-hat, and he's got a crappy snare from high school. I mean, that's the kind of detail you want to have. So hear noise is useful before you get into a fight. In fact, in our Steadying the Hill Giant adventure, it's very interesting because Venjar did do a hear noise check over here at this doorway, this big doorway that leads up into the big giant party room, whatever the devil you want to call it. There's this huge, massive chamber where the Steady the Hill Giant chief himself is having this huge, get-together party type thing, and he did a hear noise check, and so did Eliphanisi, and they were able to determine that behind this door here, there were sounds of lots of laughing and yelling and cheering and drinking and swearing and all, and they could tell basically a big wild party was going on. And so that was pretty useful information. Okay, let's just jump back to this player's handbook again. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let me try reopening it so I don't have to, because I dragged the table off and I want to make sure I got it set up properly. This will just take me a second. Bear with me. So get rid of this. I don't know why PDFs do that. I hate it. All right. And let's go to Show Hide Navigation Panes and Page Thumbnails, and I'll make these big. There we go. Now we're back in business. And let's go back down to our... Now I can jump to pages immediately without having to scroll and make you feel seasick. All right. There we go. Let's go back down to here. Here's where we were. This column here. So let's look at this. The listening door thing, I talked about that already, right? Ascending, descending, vertical surface, the ability of the thief to climb up and down walls, assumes the surface is coarse and offers ledges and cracks and toes and handholds. This is referring to his climb walls, CW. Thieves and assassins and monks can climb walls. That basically means they don't run up the side of a wall like some parkour kid or something. In fact, let's do it like this. Let's say that here's a giant at a table drinking, and his buddy sitting at the table drinking as well. And we'll pull this a little closer here, right? So here's these two dummies drinking at this table. Okay? And let's say Varinjar is hidden in shadows, and he's moving silently, and he comes whooping along like this to get a shot at these guys, right? Now, if you're very, very creative, you could really take advantage of the situation and do some nasty stuff. You could climb the walls. So he can go over here where these boulders are and climb up. These are boulders stacked on the ground, okay? He could climb over the wall and climb over these boulders all the way above this guy and then drop down on top of him and kill him. Now, if there was a torch on the wall and he's being illuminated, he'd cast a big goofy shadow on the wall. It would look really weird. It wouldn't make any sense. So in this kind of situation, I'm just going to tilt this up a little bit like this. In this kind of situation, he could actually get the jump on these guys or even climb all the way over to here, right, and go up to the staircase and go to the staircase and jump down. Or you might be in a situation, let's say these guys are fighting him, and he's cornered. He could run around the corner and then quickly run up the side of the wall and jump up to the upper platform like this where these stairs are. So climb walls is if you get hit, it's going to interrupt you. It's just like any kind of first-person shooter. So climb walls is a really interesting thing you could do. You could hide in shadows, climb walls, go up into the rafters, and then crawl across the rafters and drop down on one of these guys and kill them. So it's kind of a Splinter Cell kind of a vibe going on. That's a really fun thing you can do. Most people don't use it. It's really weird. Of all the years I've played and all the games I've worked on and everything else, you rarely have a situation where people are using climb walls. Splinter Cell is probably the only game that anyone ever did this kind of stuff, right? But in D&D, it's really, really interesting, creative way to do it. In fact, you could stump your DM the next time you're playing by trying it out. Next time you're playing an adventure, whether it's on the D&D 5th edition things or whatever you're doing, have your rogue or your assassin, your thief, or whatever the hell it's called, whatever your Pathfinder, whatever you're playing, and say, I'm going to try to hide in shadows first, and then I want to move silently, and then I want to climb walls, because you'll make the climb walls check as soon as you make the hide in shadows and move silently, and then you climb the wall up as high as you can and see if there's any kind of rafters above, and then creep around on top of the rafters above and then attack from above. Like you have imagine these hill giants are standing in the room and you're up in some rafters and you're shooting at them with a crossbow and they're like, go get a rock to throw a rock at them. You can just hide back and forth and shoot at these guys. They can never get to you. They'll never be able to reach you. So that kind of stuff is a very tactical way to get a superior position on things. It's kind of a Batman kind of a vibe too if you think about it from the perspective of how you're utilizing your abilities. All right, let's go back to the player's handbook here. So backstabbing, this is really, really important. There's one of the guys in the Facebook forum who's really, really smart. I think his name's Mabry. He believes in assassination very, very hardcore. I'm more of a backstab kind of a guy, and let me explain to you why I am. And it's not that I'm right and he's wrong. It's just a personal opinion, and this is the thing to think about. Right here, check this out. Backstabbing is striking a blow from behind, be it with a club, dagger, sword. The damage done per hit is twice normal for the weapon, used per 4 experience levels of the thief. So in fact, double damage from levels 1 to 4, triple damage from levels 5 to 8, quadruple damage from 9 to 12, quintuple, that's 5, quintuple from levels 13 to 16. Note that striking from by surprise from behind also increases hit probability by 20% to your die roll. All right, let's just do that exactly. Whoops. Let's do in a specific situation. Varinjar actually one-shotted a hill giant mini boss at the bottom level of the steadying the hill giant chief by doing what we just talked about right there. So hidden shadows. This guy's here by himself. Come up from this guy from behind, and let's take a closer look at that. Right. So if you're going to get one some surprise, they're either sleeping, or you snuck up on them. So hide in shadows, move silently first, come up behind the guy, take your time, and then tell the DM what you're going to do. It's like, I'm going to take both axes, try to chop this guy in his lower spine. Or I'm going to take both axes, try to hamstring him, so the moment I hit him, he can't really move well. The DM might let you do a called shot like that. He may make it harder for you. He may make your roll to hit harder. What you definitely want to do is you want your opportunity to roll your d20s, because if you roll a natural 20, it's going to be double damage. So what we had in that situation was Varinjar rolled a natural 20 on his main hand, a natural 20 on his offhand, and he did quad surprise backstab damage, and then he was wearing this girdle of fire giant strength, if I'm not mistaken. In fact, let's take a look at that right here. He's got this girdle of fire giant strength, which would give him plus 13 to his damage rolls, and it was just crazy. So we rolled the damage, and it was like 23 damage a main hand and 27 damage offhand. That was multiplied times 2 to be, because there were 2 natural 20s, so it became a 46, a 46, and then a whatever that is, 54, a 54, and then that was multiplied times 4. It was just like over 300 damage, just dead. And that sounds really overpowered, and it probably is one of the most overpowered things in first edition you could possibly do. If you can make the hide and shadows check, if you can make the move silently check, if you can roll a really great roll to hit, and even if you don't roll a natural 20, you're going to do additional damage because of what level your assassin, your thief is. Now, there are tables in first edition, when you go down to the assassin himself, that's called an assassination table. But you should read that really, really carefully. In fact, where is our DM screen? It has an assassination table on it. It's kind of a different animal altogether. This is kind of like a percentage chance to assassinate something that's planned out in advance. Let's just read through it real quickly here. So this is a percentage. This is what we're talking about. Is this right here? This percentage shown to success under near optimum conditions. What's optimum conditions? Okay, you're going to kill Caesar and he's sleeping in his bed. He's not walking along the balcony. He's not ordering a pizza. It's nothing like that. You guys asleep, unaware of your presence. You may just slightly upwards perfect the conditions, blah, 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 blah. Very drunk, unguarded. Similarly, you must deduct points. So this is a situation where the intended level of the victim, the level of the assassin. So if you're a level 10 assassin and you want to do an assassination attempt on someone unaware, you have 45% chance to flat out kill them if you don't have great weapons and if you don't hit well. So assassination empowers you to one-shot something when you don't even have to roll to hit. So you could do that method, but you can't do both. You can't do a surprise backstab, roll the d20s, do the damage, do double damage. If you're playing 3.5, you're using rapiers, you get this threat range. I think it's like 17 to 20. You either do A or you do B. So assassination tip would be like, okay, let's do it like this, right? Let's say this dude's laying in the bed. Here's a bed. Here's a crappy hill giant pillow. He's sleeping. And here's the wall, right? So just say this is the wall. His bed's up against the wall. You're hiding shadows. You come up to him. He's sleeping on his side. You say, okay, I'm going to slip around the other side where this guy's sleeping, and I'm just going to cut his jugular. So that's like an assassination roll. So, okay, go ahead and at near optimum conditions, roll your assassination roll. 49. Well, you failed. Now the guy's been damaged. You cut him, and the DM might say, okay, just roll your main hand damage with no additional penalties because you're trying to, euthanize the guy. You weren't just hitting him. So if you remember the scene in The Lord of the Rings where the ring wraiths start chopping in the bed, trying to kill all the hobbits that are in the prancing pony or whatever, that's basically like an assassination attempt, but they're kind of rolling to hit. I'm much more of a fan of if you're dual wielding especially, roll those rolls to hit, do it as a surprise backstab. It just means your first 2 strikes are going to hit like a truck, and if you're going to get quintuple damage if you're level 13, you're going to get double damage you're like level 5. That's fantastic. If you don't have if you have really crappy weapons and something's really, really powerful, you're not going to be able to assassinate a dragon. But you could one-shot it. You could cut its head off. So you really have to kind of think about assassination for the assassin or the thief with backstab. The thief, the strength is the backstab. I always encourage people to take advantage of that. Use the other abilities to set up the backstab because that is going to be something you're just going to chuckle with glee like a child when you kill something that easily. All right, let's go back to Player's Handbook again. And let's get this zoomed in so we can see a little bit better. All right, where were we? Thieves have their own language called Thieves Can't. Never seen anyone use it ever. Very rarely. It's almost like being Drow using sign language, their own high sign language. It reads great in an R.A. Salvatore book, but in a gameplay situation, it's not really used very often. I mean, most DMs don't get into that kind of dirty detail with their gameplay scenarios. If they say, do you yell out to your friend? Do you whisper to your friend in the hallway? Like, oh, yeah, they're whispering. They're going to control their voice so no one can hear them. So say here's a hill giant here. Here's a hill giant here. And this is Eliphanisi hidden in shadows and Varinjar's hidden in shadows. And they basically he goes to whisper to her, you take the one on the right, I'll take the one on the left. I mean, they could just whisper that to each other. Now, he can't turn to her and do the thieves' cant language or sign language to her. She won't understand what it is. She's a monk. So it doesn't make any difference. Unless he was paired up with another rogue, then it wouldn't work. So it can come into play, but not that often. I wouldn't focus on it too much. If you're a real power gamer and you're super creative, you may find that kind of stuff does happen more often than not. So at level 4, they're called a burglar. At the different levels of first edition, they give you little titles. You see these little titles right here? They're like Renjar's level, what is he, 12 now or something? He's 11. His title would be Master Thief of the 11th level, whatever. Yeah, he's an assassin, so his title would actually be different. The assassin titles are down here somewhere. Here we go. Let's see where the assassin title would be for him. Titles are funny. Here we go. Level 11 assassin, senior assassin. That doesn't sound very impressive. Who wants to be a senior assassin? It sounds like someone in an old folks home. So the titles are just kind of fun. They're great for the druids and the magic users because they're much more powerful and exciting sounding. But for the thieves, don't really worry about that. Say, yeah, I'm playing a level 4 burglar. I mean, it sounds like you're playing Lord of the Rings online if you're doing that kind of business. So let's go through the rest of these abilities real quickly, and then we'll jump a little bit more detail on just the assassin, okay? So at level 10, this is really useful. At level 10, you have the ability to decipher magical writing. Do you remember the scene when Gunwolf's trying to read the entrance to the, was it Mines of Moria? And it says, speak open, friend, to enter, or whatever the line was from the film and from the books, I don't remember. So decipher magical writing and utilize scrolls of all sorts, excluding those of clerical. It means you can't get a heal scroll and use it to classic heal, nor druidic nature. So none of the holy ones that require like divinity or using, having a god grant you your prayers to, because all the clerics and the druids have to have a divine god that's granting them their magical powers. Magic users don't do that. They just study stuff out of a book, right? So, however, the fact that these do not fully comprehend magic means a 25% chance of writings will be misunderstood. Furthermore, magic spells from scrolls can be mispronounced when uttered, so there's an increasing chance per level the spell will be reverse its intent. So that's kind of interesting. If I was playing a thief, you wouldn't catch me reading a scroll to save my soul unless it was something really, really useful that was defensive in nature. You would have to have someone identify the scroll for you first and then give it to you. Like, hey man, here's a gate scroll. You can use the scroll. Or here's a fireball scroll, level 3, or a global darkness, or invisibility scroll. That'd be super handy, right? You can read the scroll, but you're not a magic user. You don't really do any incantations. You might be able to get invisibility or massive visibility spell off or something like that. Kind of useful, not amazing, but useful to a certain degree. In 3rd edition, 3.5, and Pathfinder, the Bard, a bunch of other classes, they get to do this kind of stuff all the time. So, so this is where I'm going to kind of gloss through this part here. Once again, you've heard me say this, if you were watching all these other episodes, that there's a lot of rules in 1st edition about having a stronghold and attracting followers and having an army and starting your own guild. And it's really neat. It's really cool. But it doesn't have that moment-to-moment gameplay that most players are after. Most players are looking for that amazing fight scene from their favorite film to happen in their adventures. So if you want to play into that, there's rules about it. The DM's Guide has more rules about it. You're going to get a basic idea of how it works. That just describes, at 10th grader level, you may use your small castle to set up a headquarters for a gang of thieves. I mean, it's really neat and everything, but most people don't really do that. But it's there. I mean, it's a really creative idea. I think it's fantastic they have that in there, but no one really does that. So when you're rolling your thief or your assassin or what have you, the table, the level that you are, this is where you're going to find all those basic abilities. Pickpockets, open locks, find/remove traps, move silently, hide in shadows, hear noise, climb walls, and read languages. So say you're level 5 thief, right? Level 5, and you want to hide in shadows. Well, your base percentage chance is only 31%. If you were a elf thief, you'd have a bonus of 10%, or is it a bonus of 0? What does that say? I can hardly even read it. If you were an elf, it's weird, it doesn't have a plus sign in front of it. Let's just say if you're a gnome, okay, you get a plus 5% chance. There's also some modifiers for dexterity, so you go all the way back to your ability score tables. Those are the 3 places you're going to get bonuses to some of your thief abilities based on some of your statistics and things like that. Here it is here, the dexterity table, it's like page 11. So say you had 18 dexterity, right? And you're find your move traps, moving silently, plus 10% for that. So you can take that 31%, add 10%, that means you have 41% chance. And if you were playing a gnome, you get another 5%. So the racial abilities of all the classes in the game, the racial abilities have the most impact on thieving abilities. Let's get back down to our thief again. Magic user, thief. There we go. So this is them explaining the percentile dice like I explained to you already. So that's pretty much it. Now let's go quickly over the assassin. And I'm just going to say one basic thing about the assassin. The assassin has the same exact abilities as a thief. Okay, they have a few extra perks they can use, but it's really more of an attitude thing. If you want to do an assassination attempt and you don't have a lot of good gear on and you're low level, you're level 3, and you want to try assassinating a Kelpie or something like that and Shran to Moashan, go for it. If you get the situation to work out perfectly for you. You're not going to have a lot of gameplay scenarios where you're going to sneak into the castle and steal the crown jewels and assassinate a guard in the hallway. That's not considered the ideal conditions. Okay. The assassin, like the ranger and the paladin, is a subclass of the fighter, and like the druid's a subclass of the cleric. I think of them as a prestige class in a way in 3rd edition. Here's what they require for them to be able to be an assassin at all. Okay, so you're going to have a minimum strength of 12, intelligence of 11 or more, and dexterity score not less than 12. Not too bad. So if you're going to play an illusionist, it's a lot harder because you have to have high dexterity. So when you go through this, you'll realize there's a lot of stuff about poison for the assassin. I'm not going to get into the bogged down details. You can just read this yourself. But I want to talk. Now, when you get higher intelligence, you can learn alignment tongue for different types of alignment. That's nice for the assassin because the idea behind the assassin is this is a version of the thief that's more designed to kill and murder. All right. So when this one here is really interesting. Let's zoom in on this a little bit and give you a good sense of what this is all about. Disguise. So this is something that these are the languages here carrying over from the previous page. Disguises can be done in order to gain the opportunity to poison or surprise a victim for other reasons. Assassin can disguise himself or himself to appear to be human, semi-human, humanoid creature of either sex. The size can lower the height by 2 to 3 inches, raise it up by 4 or 5 inches, make the assassin appear lower. Now, if you're playing a campaign where you're in a city like Waterdeep or Neverwinter, or you're in Greyhawk or Molvar or wherever you are, and you're playing assassin, go back and read some of those Robert E. Howard, Conan the Barbarian books, like Conan the Buccaneer, okay? By L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter, which was written after Robert E. Howard passed away. In the first opening scene, Conan's having a big brawl in a bar, and I think Mankara is running through the streets, and a patrol of guards see him, and some guys murder him in the street. And Conan runs around through the whole town trying to figure out what happened to his friend, and finally bumbles across him. So if you're playing a thief, or you're playing an assassin, I mean, you could disguise yourself as somebody else and get past someone's guards. You know, in EverQuest 2, there's some situations in that MMO to do that kind of stuff, and there's a lot of polymorphing happening in EverQuest 1 if you're playing Enchanter. Disguise is used a lot for some game mechanics in World of Warcraft, and even Rift has some disguises you could use. ESO has a tons of disguises. ESO is probably the only MMO that really kind of did it right in terms of the disguise mechanic, where you got like an outfit, you put it on, you're running around the town, everything's like neutral faction to you. So think of situations where you could use the assassin's ability to use disguise to get more information, get past some guards, trick someone into thinking that you belong here, pretend you're a priest, walk around. And if you ever saw the Conan the Barbarian movie, you know, Conan puts on a priestly garb and sneaks his way into Thulsa Doom's temple. And you know, he's not really an assassin. He kind of barely got away with it. But if you were an assassin, you'd be able to get away with that stuff very easily. So if you're not going to be able to disguise yourself as a hill giant, they're not going to fall for it. But any kind of game, like if you're in the Vault of Drow and you're going to be walking down the streets of the Vault of Drow in Erlen Sindlu or Menzo Branson in 3.5, and you want to disguise yourself as a Drow fighter from Melee Magarth or whatever the devil it's called, go for it, because that's what an assassin will be able to do really, really well. In fact, you think of the Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker scene in Star Wars where he says, we're not the droids you're looking for. The assassin could probably pull that off. So the assassin could disguise himself and convince the stormtroopers that, hey, we're actually just spice miners visiting, doing this, that, and the other. And they would probably believe you. So deception is a real key to the assassin. If you ever see the Bruce Willis movie, The Jackal, the guy disguises himself in lots of different looks and things like that to make him look like other people. John Malkovich does that in one of the films he's in with Clint Eastwood. So on and on and on. Disguise is really cool when used properly. Most of the time it's not going to be used in a dungeon. You're not going to be in the middle of a dungeon going, I'm going to try to disguise myself as a gnome and then walk into the room. If you don't have that stuff with you. So if you're in a city, you go gather the clothing, the ingredients, the stuff you might need, makeup, whatever it's going to take, come back 2 or 3 hours later and disguise yourself as someone from the city guard and walk right into the jail and lift the keys off the wall and unlock the jail and let all your friends free, which is a scene from my book Iron Will Rust that happens when the priest in the book he he just walks right into the jail and lifts the keys off of. He bumps and thieves the pickpocket the keys, walks down the hallway and lets his friends out of jail. It's pretty cool. You should check it out sometime if you like that kind of adventure. It's really fun. All right, so let's go back to the Assassin real quick. They have rules in here for spying. This is more like a big, long-term type of a role. And then they just go right back into the assassination section. So the big difference between the assassin and the thief is this whole assassination table. And it's pretty self-explanatory. I read through it earlier. You can read it yourself. And then it talks about the followers and the guildmaster and all that kind of business. So then it goes into the monk, which you've already talked about. So in summary, just real quickly, I personally think if you're going to play a thief, if you can play an assassin, why not play an assassin? Because you get more tools. There's nothing the thief can do that the assassin can't do. If you got the stats, it's not that hard a requirement. You're going to have this assassination table. You can probably pull off a few kills. The disguise thing is fantastic in cityscape environments. You know, if you're in an environment with a lot of bipeds or humanoids, you know, you could dress yourself up to look like a bunch of half-elves and walk into a wood elf town and get away with it. That's where the fun happens. Now, and remember the whole move silently, hide in shadows trick I talked about? Think about ways to use your thieving abilities to not just be a trap locator and a lock opener. You're not just a grunt. You're a forward scouting kind of a special forces operative Navy SEAL guy. And the things you can do as an assassin or a thief can really change the tide of any battle. And if you get in trouble, you can always just run away. All right, so we're going to wrap that episode up. Hope you had fun with this one. If you're playing 5th edition, you know the 5th edition and 3rd edition, they have a lot more complicated rules. But one thing about 1st edition that I think makes it more interesting is a lot of those rules are very open-ended. So things like find and remove traps, roll percentage chance, it's not just yes or no. The DM has an opportunity to do some interplay with you. All right, we're going to stop that episode here. We'll talk to you again later, and hope you have a fun night. And we'll do another episode pretty soon for the 1st edition stuff. We'll probably cover the spell casting, and I'll probably skip Magic User and Illusionist, and we'll talk about the spell casting system, or maybe we'll talk about some of the illusionist spells. Anyway, we'll figure that out soon enough, and you have a great night. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in.